or to any of the RCMP officers or any of that.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone. We do have someone on an iPhone. Oh, that's, yeah. No, not wait. Oh my. Oh, it's Brian. Brian.
Brian Glee calling in from my
Oh,
phone.
I wasn't seeing anybody. Okay, Brian, thanks. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order this evening. We have a quorum, from what I can see. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're good. We'll entertain any conflicts of interest declarations at this point. Are there any to be made? No, okay, thank you. You've all had a chance to review the agenda. Can I have someone move that agenda be accepted as presented? Okay, Sam, Wayne seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Minutes. I have 4 sets of minutes here. Minutes of regular board meeting, June 23rd, 2022. Minutes of special board meeting, July 28th, 2022. Minutes of special board meeting, August 9th, 2022. And the minutes of special board meeting, August 16th, 2022. You've all had a chance to review those minutes. Are there any comments, questions? Hearing none, can I have someone move that those minutes be adopted as presented? Yep. Wayne? Seconder? Okay. Heather seconded, thank you. All those in favor, by saying aye? Aye. Thank you. Business arising from the previous minutes, local governance reform update, Halls.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a short report that was included in your package, and I'm going to any other additional updates I'm going to turn over. We actually have 2 transition facilitators with us tonight. Welcome back, Ken Anthony, and Maurice has stayed with us as well. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So essentially, what I did was I listed a few of the meetings and some of the things that have happened over the last little while. Meeting with the land bast, and that was regarding some funding opportunities for economic development. It was in July. Deputy Minister announced progress with the statements of public interest, and that's related to our local planning. On July 21st, we had a special board meeting here on July 28th, centered around economic development. Community Inclusion Network meeting. So we discussed the migration of the SIN to the RSC on August 3rd. Another special board meeting on August 9th, again, economic development. Vibrant Communities throughout county had their AGM on August 11th, and that was the public announcement of the migration of vibrant communities to the Regional Service Commission. I attended that, and I addressed the folks at present. Another special board meeting here, and that was around economic development, but also the other mandates of community development and tourism promotion. And then there was a community capacity and resiliency meeting on August 18th, which talked briefly about the integration of that because that goes through the community inclusion network and how that's going to be a part of the Regional Service Commission. So that meeting happened on August 18th. And there's been lots of other non-meeting type work that's been happening in the last couple of months. Lately, it's been mostly about this budget and a few other things. So it looks like the migration of the Community Inclusion Network to the Regional Service Commission happens in this upcoming November. ESIC will be providing funding for the 2022 portion of that. So there's no impact to our budget of this year. And I did have a paragraph down here, but there's going to be an expansion on this a little bit later, but there's been an indication from the LG that there is funding available for any new initiatives that we want to get started early. And so we're kind of looking at a couple of possibilities of doing so. That way we hit the ground running in January. That's all I had in my report. Maurice and or Ken, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, nothing, nothing really, except just one bit of information. It relates to the additional funding for economic development that we're looking to get from PEDAL. I was on a call yesterday with PEDAL, and there are, I think, Envision obviously has their arrangement. In Ignite, Fredericton has been approved for the capital region, but the 10 other RSCs have yet to secure funding. I was informed that PEDAL will be going ahead to Cabinet probably early in September with a memo to Cabinet requesting that the funding for all of the 10 remaining RSCs, including Southwest, be approved all in one fell swoop. So it's good progress on that. I was a little surprised that they're going to do a MEC for all of them, but that's encouraging, so that all of the RSCs, including Southwest, will be included in that memorandum to Cabinet, which presumably will be approved. And then we'll have confirmation shortly thereafter that that PEDAL funding is coming effective January 2023. That's really the only thing I think I have to add at the moment. Hollis, thank you.
Ken, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. I was a little bit late today. I came back to work on Monday past. I was off for a couple of weeks dealing with some medical things, but everything is back to normal, considering what normal is for me. So I went down through the different mandated services, and I believe Hollis circulated that later today, and it spoke about public safety and community development, regional transportation, economic development, tourism promotion, and sport and recreational culture, infrastructure, cost sharing. So I hope you all had a chance to read that. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And if I can't get your answer tonight, I'll get an answer to you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My apologies, Ken. I actually never got around to circulating that, so that's completely my fault. I can put it up on the screen if you'd like. But,
well, I can just circulate it to you, Hollis, and you can send it out to the board members.
Sure.
Okay.
Any other questions? New business, we'll go through the budget. Mark.
I've got a little presentation that I want to answer. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I had Mark there as well.
Yeah.
Mark will answer the hard questions after I'm done.
Sounds good. Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the high level stuff. I just want to preface this a little bit and just so that everybody understands, this budget that you have in front of you is a draft budget. It is in flux. It is due to change. I would call this a worst case scenario budget. So this doesn't include some inputs that I'm hoping to get before we actually submit for approval. So I'm just going to leave that there. So in our budget, there's no significant changes for our operations for solid waste coming up for 2023. Some minor changes to our planning inspection service, and that comes from realignment of boundaries and merging of municipalities as a result of local governance reform. In addition, we're adding the new services, including economic development, community development, transportation, tourism promotion, public safety committee as a requirement of legislation. So that has changed our budget significantly. In solid waste, there's no change to member tipping fees for 2023. We have felt the impact of inflation, particularly in fuel this year. but also in cost of parts and repairs and everything as everybody else has felt, the cost of everything go up. Result is that we're running a lot tighter to our budget this year than we have in previous years. But in light of the new mandated services that we have to deliver next year, we felt that we could keep the tipping fee stable for one more year. Would be beneficial to municipalities. We're going to do that by possibly using a little bit of our reserve to do so. So our capital costs from 2023 is going to come largely from operations, but we may need to dip into our capital reserves as we move through the year. It won't be a lot. We've budgeted 65,000 from reserve at this point. And capital purchases next year is going to include a rock truck, a utility vehicle, pump replacement, and cell construction. Planning, there's not a lot of change internally for the planning division. For I don't know why I have 2021 there. It should be 2023. There's no planned additions of any permanent personnel. We're going to shift around some duties a little bit, but that's about it. There's going to be a change in who we serve with the loss of Harvey and the expansion of new entities due to local governance reform. But our current staffing, we have enough people to be able to service everything that is within our region. Our costs, the general static costs are going to increase as a matter of inflation, but we've shifted a few things around. So, for instance, the building that planning is housed out of in Wall Street in St. Stephen was a planning, it was actually a solid waste asset that is quote unquote leased by planning, but that's actually going to be shifted to corporate. The reason being that building is also going to house economic development, tourism promotion, all the new services. So therefore, each one of those services has a piece of that cost as well. So that means that the planning portion will decrease a little bit. We moved a vehicle into corporate as well for the same reasons. So the corporate costs are going to be split out a lot more equitably along the other services, and we have a much better reflection of how that gets used. But the ultimate result, after we went through all the calculations, is that the actual rates for planning and inspection are going to decrease ever so slightly for everybody. So at least it's going in the right direction there. Other services, so cooperative regional planning, that changes dramatically on your budget forms, and the reason for that is we had recreation in there previously. That moves to its own budget. And then of course recreation, tourism promotion, economic development, community development, transportation each have their own budgets as well. There is some government assistance with some of these mandates, E6 contribution towards community development. And as I said here, we haven't established the full range of funding available from government for all the services. So at this point, additional costs for new services, I had to budget from member contributions. Definitely, as Marisa just alluded to, there's new information coming to light over the next few weeks, and that will change that budget, I hope. Our corporate budget has increased significantly for 2023. And this is the one that gets split out amongst every other budget, doesn't have its own revenue stream. As I mentioned, it's because we're moving the building towards corporate, and there's a vehicle, but there is also a budgeted amount for both an executive director and a CEO. And that's based on the information I currently have available. If that changes over the next month, then, and one of those can be taken, and that's what's going to happen for that's submitted. So we were as conservative as we could be in light of the new stuff that we have to do. We understand there's pressures on municipalities, and so we're sensitive to that. So we have cut as much as we can. And the evidence of that is that we're not raising tipping fees. I think that's the biggest one. By rights, we really should be. But we're able to do it this year. I would be assured that, you know, in 2024's budget, that there was probably going to be a raise in tipping fees unless price of everything goes down dramatically, which is unlikely. So the conclusion is that if the upcoming year was a normal year, our tipping fees would be going up. But we're in a good enough position that we're able to hold the line at 2023 on our garbage rate. And again, this is a draft budget, so I've got a few numbers to throw at you.
Okay, Hollis, before we go any further, Alan's got a question.
Oh, sure.
Alan, go ahead.
Thanks, Ken. Just a question to Hollis or the board. They can all get the thoughts. I don't like to not, I don't mind hold the line. I get that. But to hold the line and then not take a slight increase this year and then have to take a bigger one next year, I don't like doing that. So is that something that concerns you?
I think we're good for 2023, and that's simply because of the reserves that we have if we need them. And we're still a little conservative on a couple of our estimates for income in garbage from foreign, but I get what you're saying too, and I'm good either way. I'm comfortable with leaving them where they are. But if others are not, then that's okay too. We had originally considered a 3% raise.
There's I just want to say there's some other flex in this budget as well. I don't know if this is the spot to mention it, but I'm going to bring it up now. Before our last board meeting, we had an executive meeting. So Glenn and Jim and I, we met with Hollis, and taking into account the amount of money that we were going to get from federal, that 230,000, we had worked it out so that really operating these 4 new pillars, we really had that cost down to almost zero. But then when we came in for the board meeting, we saw a significant increase in the amount of money that was going towards those. And that was on the order of that 500,000. Now tonight, when we come in, we're hearing that 500,000 may be significantly reduced by a new initiative being taken with federal money that may reduce that. All that to say is we really don't have a firm handle on how much money we're going to have. I suspect we're not going to spend that 550,000. I think it's going to be significantly less than that. So that 65,000 that we're looking at from capital, I don't think we'll need to touch that at all. I think with the reduction that we're anticipating with pedal, we're hoping that will not become an issue. I just wanted to throw that in there.
It's not just pedal, if I can add, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
We're also, there's other avenues of, for instance, tourism money. It's possible that come from THC, where I have somebody at ELG looking into that as well. And every other regional service commission is in the same boat right now. And we're all kind of going the same way. I had a discussion today with the others. There's a potential money from ACOA. You know, there's different things, but I just don't have any firm commitments on finances, so therefore I can't budget for anything I don't know yet.
Yeah. And that's why we're calling this a worst case budget, Alan. Alan, your hand's still up. You got another comment?
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. So on that, taking money from the reserves, can we hold off and leave that in the reserve and just do a request to the board for out of budget expense? That way it stays in there.
I would have to, in order to move money out of the cap reserve, I have to get a motion from the board anyway.
Okay.
At the time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we don't feel like we're gonna need it, Alan. We looked at that through the Finance and Audit Committee as well. And we think it's only there as an emergency pot to draw from. But as Hollis said, we still have to come back to the board to draw it. John, you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand. I understand that we have some new mandates to deliver. And economic development, tourism, I don't know if I forget any, but I'm just trying to understand, are there any specific requirements that they have been set by the province as to the scope, the size, and the budget of these initiatives? Because there is some scope, since we are starting now, to actually start small and grow from there. So essentially, instead of having like an $800,000 budget for these three initiatives, maybe we could have an $80,000 budget for these three initiatives. Are there any quantitative requirements imposed by Fredericton on how much we need to spend, we must spend?
You want me to handle that, Hollis? Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question. It's a good one. There have been no specific directives as to the amount of money that should be allocated for these services. That being said, we facilitators and the EDs, the executive directors, are talking to one another, and we're trying to do what's reasonable relative to what's being done in some of the other jurisdictions. So we're trying to maintain a certain level of balance, if you will. So that's really and it really in the end becomes a bit of a judgment call as to exactly what you think the amount should be. But we have given these numbers a considerable amount of thought. They've been thrown around, they've been bounced around, they've been up, down, sideways, every which way. And the numbers we have now are as good as we can have them for the present time. They're not inconsistent with the other jurisdictions that are of the same relative size, magnitude, and tax base, etc. In fact, if they are anything, they are a little bit lower. For example, the Western Valley, which is sometimes compared to Southwest, it has no massive large urban center like Fundy or Capital Region. Theirs is at about 2.2 cents, whereas this one is a little under 2 cents. So I think you're in the right ballpark with the numbers that you're working with now. But as was stated, these numbers could be impacted, and if they are, they would be impacted downward by additional funds that may be secured from places like tourism and ECOA. I can't say specifically and firmly that you'll get money from those, but I can say pretty firmly that the pedal money is pretty much locked in. I mean, that they've made the department has made a commitment. They've given that money to Envision. They've agreed to give the money to Ignite. It'll go through the RSC, but for Ignite for use in the Capital Region. But ultimately, all of the regional service commissions will have access to pedal money. If we can get tourism money, if we can get ECOA money, if we can get money from other departments, I think all of that is a bonus. Okay.
Okay. Hollis, back to you.
So this is just a summary that's on the first main page of
Hollis, just wait. I got a quick question there.
Sorry, Wade, we didn't.
No, my hand, the hand thing won't work for some reason. So what I'm wondering here is this funding, right? And I mentioned this to Maurice, I think last time. How long is it secured for? Is it only for next year? Is it like, because I think you said 5 years, some of them were 10 years. This is important in my opinion, because if we're going to put this much money into a budget for next year, it's going to set a precedent. It's going to set kind of a tone. And then if the next year, if ESIC's not there, if pedal's not there, if it gets cut in half or whatever, then we're kind of stranded. So okay. I'm kind of with John saying maybe we should take what money we can get from funding and only spend that money Keep
Yeah.
it smaller until we know exactly what we need for this area. And then, once we have long-term funding agreements in place for 5 years or 10 years, and we know we're going to get this money, then we grow it, then we make it bigger, and then we can build kind of a Cadillac. But I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse right now. Just my opinion.
Okay, well, another good question. Well, let's take them one at a time. The pedal money that is in place for Envision is 10 years. The pedal money that's in place with Ignite will be for 10 years. I have every reason to believe that the pedal money that's going to go through the cabinet meeting sometime in September for all of the remaining 10 RSCs will be for a 10-year commitment. I mean, I haven't seen the MEC, but you have to assume that if they do it for 2, they're going to do it for the others. The ESIC money is decided on a year-by-year basis by the province. However, that funding has been provided to ESIC over the last number of years. I think it's 8 at least, if not more. And there's every reason to believe that that funding is going to continue. I have said in other meetings similar to this one that, for example, if the ESIC money were to be eliminated, I doubt highly that that would happen. However, if the province were, to go through a reform like this, they would say, look, we encourage you to use the ESIC approach, to use the ESIC money and so on, and then to have the province cut that money, I would see that as being very odd. But if it were done, then I think the board could very rightly decide, well, look, if we have no funding, even though it may be a priority, if we don't have the funding, then we simply don't proceed. To your point about the approach of saying, well, look, why don't we make this as small as we can? I would say this. Some of the money that you get is targeted to certain things. So, for example, the ESIC money is community development. So you can't use that money, and regional transportation. So you really can't use that to pay for the board meetings of the Public Safety Committee. Similarly, the pedal money. The pedal money is not for, broadly speaking, economic development initiatives at the regional level. The pedal money is specifically focused on labor force development and related work. And so you oftentimes will get funds that are provided to the RSC, but they're really targeted to specific activities. So that kind of argues against the idea of saying, well, look, let's just take the pot of money that we have and spend that and then see what happens after that. And then the other argument I would make, the other point I would make is that relative to the other regional service commissions that are of comparable size, I think you do want to have some measure of comparability. That's the other approach that's being used as well. And look, at the end of the day, I'll close with this. At the end of the day, let's assume, fingers crossed and, a lot of good fortune, that these envelopes of additional potential money can be realized. Then simply what happens, the money goes in reserve and you use it down the road. And perhaps for the following year, your budgets are a little bit lower because you've ended up saving the money that you otherwise were going to spend. So I think it's better to be relatively stable and relatively in the same playing field as other RSCs of your size, and then adjust it accordingly going forward. And as I said, this one is a relatively modest one, particularly as compared to Western Valley, which is of a comparable nature to Southwest.
Thanks. No, that's good. And just so for instance, pedal money can't be spent to pay the wages of the CEO we're hiring.
No.
Okay.
And even,
Oh, that's
and,
good.
Wade, good point. I mean, and even here's another example. There are 3 buckets of money that you're getting from ESIC. One is for the salary, one is for regional transportation, and one is for additional social activity in the community development field. You cannot take a penny from the last 2 envelopes I mentioned to cover the salary for the CEO. So, this funding is great. The problem is sometimes it has certain restrictions tied to it that you need to abide to, as you well know.
Yep. Well, that's good. That's what I was. Yep. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess,
Sorry, Glenn.
I guess we did talk about, any staff that was hired to support these services, we consider hiring them as contract or terms or something. So in the event that the funding did end, then the contract would end. You wouldn't renew the contract. So I guess that might be a little bit of a safety net into, getting staff that you don't have to lay off or something.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Back to you, Hollis.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, sorry.
Just yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Just want to catch you before you start the next topic. I'm sure some of you have tried to hire someone lately and how difficult that is. So I do agree, Glenn, about the contract and the timelines, but that makes it a little tougher finding someone, especially in this world we're in now.
Yep. And you have to pay more.
Yeah, short term, big, yeah.
But you know, and that is true, and I agree with all of those comments. But I'll give you an example in the Western Valley. The executive director there ran an ad for a community development individual. Ran it, I think, at roughly the amount that was allotted, or perhaps a little less than what was allotted through the ESIC contract. Didn't get any suitable respondents. Increased the salary just a little bit, and got 2 very good candidates, and one of whom is going to get the offer for the position. And one who has a really, really good background relative to the work that's needed. So it's not to diminish the comment that the labor market is tight. It's simply to say that, you know, every once in a while, you'll happen on finding the right individual in the right circumstance who's looking for exactly the opportunity that's presented. But I agree that if you can have a certain degree of flexibility, then it allows you to make adjustments as you go along, just based on the circumstances in which you find yourself.
And if I can just make one more comment about the hiring, I don't want to get into specifics about it or anything like that, but I've been successful in hiring. You guys all know the staff that work here. And one of the things that we have that gives us a bit of an edge when it comes to hiring is that we have an excellent place. It's an excellent place to work. It's a good work environment, and people in the community know that. So I have people that want to work for us, and that's great. It doesn't mean that it's easy, and I agree with everything Alan said. It's not easy to find people, but we'll get it done.
Okay, over to you, then.
Okay, so again, this is just a summary off the front page of the budget, just to give you an idea of the size of all of the different budgets, and this is the total budget of each thing. So at the end of it, so we're gonna have a $7.5 million-ish operating budget and 1.3 capital budget. And the last page of my presentation is we put the numbers down. Mark did a great job of kind of putting this. I summarized them a little bit. So this represents, if you go to the total side on the very right, for each of the municipalities.
That's covered by the numbers are covered. I can't see it.
Close the thumbnail there, yeah. That one line on the top left-hand corner, hit that. See where above it, Alan's hand?
Oh, yeah, you can't see.
Oh, you can't see it.
You can't see it.
Yeah. There you go, okay.
There we go.
He's right.
Yeah, so those are that total includes garbage. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. That total includes what we're estimating the waste for each one of the municipalities is. And those totals the waste totals might look a lot larger than what they used to, but that's because the entities are bigger. So the whole point here is to kind of give you what the impact of regional service commission is going to be on your municipal budget. It's not a definitive one, but it gives you an idea. And I think I minimized this, but I think that Alan's got his hand.
We gotta go back to the other computer.
Yeah. Oh,
Here, I'll give that to you.
All right.
You can have it.
Hollis, can you go back a slide there?
Sure.
Okay, so I like these summaries, but how come we're not seeing last year's summary beside it?
No reason other than.
Oh, okay. I like to have those comparisons for me personally, but
thought we mentioned that the other day at the finance not meeting. That we could have
In,
last year.
in the actual budget form, you will find those 23 and 22.
Yeah, we're gonna list it for each.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When we go through the budget, you'll see those numbers. You want that expanded again?
Yeah, they're there for a lot of people.
Anyway, that's the end of my, my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Oh, what was the cost of living increase? Was one put in?
5.
Was that averaged over 3 years or?
Yeah, that's, yeah, but we're estimating that's gonna be about 5. Am I right, Mark?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's just a preliminary estimate.
Yeah, but that's what we do. We do a 3-year rolling average of CPI for our cost of living increase.
And that can be changed if circumstances warrant, right?
Oh,
Yeah. So if you put in there for 5 and ends up and it's a lot higher, you can be saying, oh, we're gonna fix this out.
yeah, that doesn't happen until later, so.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we go over to Mark now for a more in-depth review?
Sure.
Mark, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You wanna sit up here so they can see you and hear you better?
I don't want to be seen. Okay, so we'll go down the budget document page by page, I guess. All right, so we'll start with the first section. And this would be the corporate services. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages in. It starts with governance.
Let's CS one.
CS,
3.
Yeah.
yeah, because there is no revenue in that section. Yeah, CS-3. So we've included, same as always, the board honorariums, expenses for travel, training, all kinds of other things, same as always. As Hall has said, the administration part for chief executive officer's office, that is a lot higher than what budget was previously. Used to be 122,000, now it's 351,000. That's because we need to budget for either executive director and still continuing for the full year, because we have to pay for the CEO, and plus there's an administrative assistant. So if we know before the budget's finalized that Hollis has become CEO, we'll delete the other salary. But otherwise, you're in the situation where the province is hiring the CEO and the executive director is still employed by the Regional Service Commission. So at that point in time, the board will either decide to keep the executive director position or to eliminate it. So if Hollis is still in that position and you eliminate it, it would be severance.
But you said there's also an administrative assistant?
Yeah, that's to support all those other 5 or 6 new functions.
And that is in the budget of those costs?
That's in that total, because it's, all these corporate costs are split between all 9 services we give.
But if we're hiring an administrative assistant for those other services, does that cost go to those other services?
Yes, yeah,
So
it's all in this.
okay,
If there's a page before that that Hollis showed where the corporate costs are allocated. Okay. So other than that, there's not much else for changes in there, I don't think. So if you went back to CS1, it shows how the 713,000 is allocated. So out of the corporate costs, cooperative and regional planning takes 23,000 of these overhead costs. Local planning takes 94,000. Solid waste takes the majority of it with 332,000. We don't have electrical generation. Tourism promotions getting 69,000. Economic development is getting 71,000. Same with community development. Transportation and public safety both get about 13,000, and the recreation part gets about 26,000. And we flip back along a little farther to LP-1. LP-1. That's the start of the local planning budget. And then Paul said before, this is a preliminary budget because we don't know yet whether we'll be taking on any other members for services for planning or inspection. And so the way it rolls out here, we have a total tax base of 2,826,000. So that's approximately 600 million more than what it was the prior year. And we haven't had significant cost increases in the planning or the inspection part of it. So it allows the rate to decrease. And the planning and inspection costs are broken out for each member that's going to receive our services. And the next page is LP2, and that just shows a little bit of revenue from different services that we may get keep money from. Local planning services for administration.
Is there any reason why we're not sharing the screen? Or is that something that we're not supposed to do? Or?
No, I'm not plugged in.
Oh, okay. I know we get copies, but it's just more for the public is all too.
I don't know how
I can.
we're gonna try and bring it up here, Alan. Just everybody give us a few seconds to see if we can bring it up.
Good time to grab a snack, everyone.
When Mark said that that was the total tax base, that's the total tax base that gives the planning service, not the
Yeah.
total tax base.
Correct. Yeah.
Because the total tax base is over 3
3
billion.
billion.
Yeah.
You can have 147,000.
Yeah.
26.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
3 something.
Well, it's good somebody's paying attention.
I won't remember your name, but I don't remember the.
Okay.
So. I don't really need another tonight.
No, I don't think anything.
That's pretty much enough, like, should I have a cold beer?
Okay, so that's our local planning revenues. We have 6 members that are receiving the service. Fundy Shores, Eastern Charlotte, St. Andrews, St. Stephen, Macadam, and the rural district for Southwest. So then the next page is the page for our revenues. LP, yeah. Yeah. We have to go. So we have 3,000 in revenue. That's for various fees that we'll collect Next page down is where we get into our expenses. So we have administration. We, at the top there, we have allocation from corporate services, which is what we just talked about. So out of all the administration costs, that's the share that planning gets, 92,944. Oh, there.
Do I have the wrong version?
That's the one location.
Maybe you got an old version there.
LB3. Yeah. I'm gonna send you one I have here.
They have a new one.
We've had several versions of this, so just a second.
Yeah. Let me do something.
I'll put your last one.
Okay.
I just emailed you.
It was 93, not 91, right?
93,994 on the one I have.
Because the one we went through the other day was 91.
Yeah,
One from yesterday, right?
I just emailed
Yeah.
you.
and I believe that's because we increased the audit fee in there too. Just 2 or 3 things.
The two tabs. is the-
Mhm.
93.
It's a real joyous part of print. Some long pages and short pages and landscape and.
All right,
That looks like the original.
there's our 93,944. So that also includes part of the cost of the admin assistant that I talked about before. And you'll notice just below that for the planning director's office, salaries and benefits have dropped in this budget. And that's because we've had reallocations of personnel to planning. Or inspection, however it's gonna go. This one's planning. So we move around people as we need them in different places. So that's a drop in that budget. Down below legal services, it's gone up from 20 to 25,000. The office building has gone to 0 because the planning was the only one in that building before, so I allocated all the costs there. So now where there's multiple departments in the building, it's under corporate and then it's split to everybody. And office equipment and supplies. Yeah. We get under planning and, planning services. The salaries have gone up there because we moved part of a salary out of the admin down into planning. And I don't think there's much else for big expense changes there. Inspection services. That has gone up because we've allocated more time from somebody that works part-time here and part-time down there. So. It's a shift of wages from solid waste down to planning or inspection. And we go down a little further. Page would be page 3. You got the whole thing on the page. Just go down one more. It'd be the fiscal services section. There. Yeah. The one line says 2, the other says 5. Okay. Yeah. No people. So our banking service charges have gone up with more planning revenue. Our capital reserve transfer, that's the money that we set aside for vehicle replacement. So there's 2 vehicles bought this year, and a little later we'll do the withdrawal from the capital reserve fund. And this is money going back in to replace the funds that were there. So at the point in time we need it, we'll have money there to buy new vehicles. And so overall, the budget's gone from 721,000 to 803. Nothing for capital purchases, solid waste, so SW1. And this is our total budget, $5,110,000. You're on page SW1 if you're looking for it.
We don't have
It's good. No,
It's because, yeah, it's got to do with, I must have inserted a line up above and it wrote it down. Yeah, okay, so it has everybody's, we have our total budget of $5,110,000 for solid waste. And we're getting revenue of $4,242,000 from other sources besides the members. And down here, when you go to do your municipal budgets, you can take my numbers. I don't know, I will guarantee they're correct because of all the changes in the municipal boundaries. I had to estimate how much tonnage was coming from each new municipality. But it's somewhere close in total, so about 9,700 tons. And our capital budget is $1,280,000. Next page would be SW2. This is the start of our revenues. Okay. So our revenue sources, our industrial, commercial, institutional. It's going to be roughly the same revenue as what we budgeted last year. Construction, demolition's the same. Other regional service commissions, that's gone up slightly because even though we didn't budget for an increase in our tipping fees, we've budgeted for a 3% increase for out of our area. So Western Valley and US Waste are budgeted to go up by 3%. Our foreign waste budget, we increased it up to 1.4 million.
Important, let me jump in there. It's important to note that in the back where we had the list of members and those contributing, one of our foreign waste sources is actually Harvey.
Oh no, they're up to, under ICI now.
They're under ICI.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harvey doesn't appear in our, because they're not, that Harvey's still bringing their waste to us next year, so.
I wouldn't make you foreign, Winston. Couldn't do it.
Up them 10%.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind on the 4 feet of property up in the middle of district.
Right, special waste is cover material, same as last year. We got a few little revenues from recycling for metals from the washers, dryers, fridges, stoves. A little bit of money I budgeted for milk cartons, which wasn't in there last year for 4,000. Hoping to get an employment grant for 2,000. And the big thing that makes our budget balance here is our surplus of the second previous year, $874,000. So this is part of what Alan, as Alan alluded to about the rate not increasing this year. It's due to the fact we've got a large surplus coming in, and that arose from when we adjusted the closure fund. So. But we do have enough money in reserve funds that we can do this.
So that's where that money went to. You didn't spend it.
Well,
That's what you told me, that it was spent.
Well, it's all in
You
one.
can't be spent if it's a 2023 budget.
spent in the budget.
Yeah, you didn't say that.
Yeah.
No, there's quite a difference between spent and spent in the budget. No, that's, I thought about that all last night. I said, that money can't have been spent. I said, if it did, there's something crooked going on.
I'm glad there's nothing crooked going
No.
on.
Well, I am too.
Yeah.
Glad to see where it went to.
Yeah.
It's actually getting spent. It's in there.
It hasn't been spent yet. He told me it was spent.
Oh, not now. This is in the budget. It's,
I asked where it went to, and you even alluded to it. Well, we had this, we had that, we had everything else. But you never come right up and said exactly where the money went. That's what I asked. You said, well, we don't know because it's being split up. Well, how, when you said that it was spent, I figured it was spent this year.
Well, the way I look at it is that we've got a whole bunch of different revenue sources. And we've got a whole bunch of expenditures going out. So when the revenue comes in, it's got to balance, or the expenses go up, they've got to balance the revenue coming in.
I realize that,
That's all.
but my impression when we left the meeting the other day was that the money was already spent and gone. Wasn't coming in on this year's budget. Now I see it is, that's all I need to know. I wouldn't have to sit there and worry about it.
Okay. Covered. All right. We
So-
got 40,000.
Solid waste was under budget this year or within budget this year, yes or no?
2022s or 2023s?
2022, are we gonna come in on budget for 2022?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
It all depends on how much our capital costs are gonna be on the cell. And how much we do on the next cell in this current year.
Okay.
No, that's the best answer I can give you, Wade.
No, I know,
But
it's, yeah,
Doing extra on the next cell, that would be less that you'd have to spend next year, right, or would? or am I-
Yeah, it's a cycle, right? Because
Yeah.
as soon as we get one done, we're back
start on-
rubbing out the cell and then you gotta put the under drains in
Yeah.
for the next section eventually. So it's a continuous process.
That's from that. actually.
So
Yeah.
just to try to put it in context, 800,000 seems like a large increase in an operational budget from year to year. I could see if it was capital because equipment broke down or something come in you didn't see, but just in an operational budget. And I know it's fuel and it's this, that, and the other thing, but that's something I'll have to delve into a little bit more to see the details on that.
Now, if I was gonna tell you what it was, I would attribute it to the rock truck we're buying because this, like 2022 is a big budget year because we're finishing the cell this year. So next year is when you start the next one and do the base work. And that's usually a lower year. Right, and that would be a year we'd have extra money, we'd throw money into the capital reserve fund. So that's the best explanation I could give for
You're probably not gonna be able to put anything in the capital reserve this year.
it. Not this year, no. But 23, the idea is not to take money out of the capital reserve, because we sort of had all that discussion before that there was enough in there and
Yeah,
the board didn't want to be putting extra in and not spending it, so,
trying to get the budget closer on track.
yeah. So. Okay. So back to solid waste. So that's about the end of the interest or the income. SW3 is all the expenses. So the allocation of the corporate costs is 331,836. Then we have the director's office salaries and benefits. Stuff about that doesn't right. That should be under corporate.
No, that's directors like as installed waste directors.
Oh, yeah, never mind, you're right. Too many directors. Okay. Both the same for director's office expenses, liability insurance, both the same. All the overhead costs are both the same for solid waste and administration. Station and building expenses for operations. It didn't change a whole lot there either. Machinery and equipment is not the same scenario. Fuel, we increased the budget from 235,000 to 350,000. And we increased the repair budget from 288,000 to 336,000. So. If external factors drop the price of fuel, that will be good for us.
Just a quick question there, probably for Hollis. We was going over that the other day, and you had 344. Is that the one that you had said that we had to do the figuring on? You brought it down from 344 to 331. Is that the one that we were talking about that you said you thought was too high? And you dropped it in the new one by over 13,000.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah, because we reallocated some of that into more of the other, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I had to think about that for a second. Yeah.
So machinery and operation or equipment budget goes up by $160,000. Landfill operations, so personnel, the wages have gone up according to the pay scales and the 5% estimated cost of living increase. And in addition to that, we now have another employee working here, an apprentice mechanic. And there's one extra person added to the staff. Out in the, out there, in the landfill. And as far as that goes on the rest, there's nothing for a big change there, except for landfill gas management and engineering, so there's gonna be some.
Mark,
Okay,
I guess what changed that we added the staff?
Looks like.
We, in the personnel, it went from 1.045 million to 1.234, and we said that we added the staff.
Again.
And then another employee.
yeah, there's one net employee.
Well, I mean, 50,000 would be the 5%, I think we estimated 5%, well, 50,800.
Yeah, well, plus the 2.5% for the pay scale bumps, right, each year.
For everyone?
No, it's a merit increase.
Merit, that would be
increase.
for some,
Yeah,
but we added them, we did add an employee.
Yeah.
We said,
there's one, yeah.
That's
It'd
it.
be nice to have- it'd be nice to get an org chart for 2021 and 2022, because people have been added to planning and inspection as well. So it'd be nice to see what the overall staff has changed in any.
I mean, I can understand some things going up if the demand on planning and the demand on things going up, but if there was no change in if there was no significant change in the landfill. I mean, and I'm not saying, I don't understand what we,
We were down a little bit, like, there's a couple people that left and then we didn't fill that. So we kind of,
okay,
we let that go for a while, and probably a little too long, but.
do we have a base number that we should be for the facility? Or for the landfill?
Yeah, I gotta go back over it again, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we have a certain number of, see, we have level 2s and then we have level 3s and level 1s. These are all landfill techs, depends on their experience and qualifications, what and their responsibilities too. What they call, but there's only a finite number of, like say, level 3s. So if you're a level 2, you've got all the experience and skills and everything to move to level 3. You don't necessarily move to level 3 unless there's an actual spot.
Yeah.
So somebody retires or whatever.
I like a wage suggestion, perhaps at the September meeting, we could review the org charts and see what those look like.
Sure.
I put it down for an action point,
Yeah.
organization will chart personnel 2021, 2022.
I need to do it anyway.
Yeah.
For my own purposes, so.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. to do that.
I have an old one, but it needs to be updated, so it's a good exercise.
Thanks, Wade.
And scale house, about the same, I guess, waste diversion, nothing big plan there. HH or household hazardous waste, nothing big there.
So, just back to the waste diversion part. Nothing changes, and we're doing the same thing. I think there's gonna be a slight increase to our recycling fees. However, this PPP thing is still ongoing. And I still don't have firm answers on where that's gonna land, but that could change things significantly. And they're talking, I'm pessimistic and don't think it's gonna happen next year. They're saying, well, I think it's gonna be 2024. But it's not a dead issue. Put it that way.
That's something to consider too, Hollis, because we're just saying that we're going to use up our operating reserve to keep the tipping rates from going up. But if this PPP comes in and it throws a $300,000 bowling ball at us, then we're midterm trying to adjust something or cut something to adjust, right?
No.
Well, no, if it comes in, then it's only gonna be financially good for us.
To lower our costs.
Right.
It'll lower it by quite a bit if you get the full Monty.
Yeah, I mean, if Rollins comes in and says, yeah, we're just gonna handle all the recycling. And you're out of the business, then, you know, we just saved $365,000, so.
Okay, I'm just worried about them offloading something on us.
You want to talk about the green credits for gas? No, okay. Another potential one down the road.
Yeah.
All right. So our capital expenditures, we budgeted $1,119,000 the year before to be paid from operations. This year it's $1.215 million.
Sorry, where'd you pull that?
I'm on,
Middle of
this would
SW5.
be SW5.
I see it now.
And throw a little in there for bad debt expense every year and closure and post-closure expense. It's a plug number for the moment because the standards have changed. There is no closure and post-closure expense in 2023. So we're still working out how to calculate the expense and.
You just want to touch on that capital fund asset acquisition. Is that the rock truck?
Oh, well, if we go to the next page, SW-cap.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's what I want.
that's where we're buying things. So our total costs that we're going to spend are on the left side. We got a waste containment cell we're going to be working on, wash truck for $775,000, pump replacement, and a site utility vehicle. So out of the $1,280,000, we're going to pay for that using $65,000 from the capital reserve fund if we need to, and $1,215,000 from operations. And that was always the plan before when we increased the tipping fees $20 over the 4 years. It was to get our fees at a high enough level that we could pay for our capital expenditures from operations and not go to the borrowing board for money. That way we avoid interest costs and we avoid the debenture issue costs as well. Next 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages we don't have because we don't have generation fund. PP-1. And we're getting into the sections here now where there could be some fluctuations. This is the budget we've done up at this point. So we have tourism promotion expenses of $276,000. And it's broken down between all the members and it's shared based on the tax base proportion.
That was 100% tax base?
Yeah, that was 100% tax base. And same with economic development. So those are the member shares that Paula showed you in the summary before. The next page, 2 pages, I guess down, we have TP2 and nothing on it. TP3 are the expenses. So we have the allocation from corporate services, 69,000. We have a 0.5 of a person for personnel, that position shared with Recreation, yeah. And then we get into our other expenses, so there'll be 90,000. And 75,000, the 90,000 will be for promotional program and 75,000 is study and plan development. Which will be done by somebody else other than us probably. We have a little bit for office equipment and supplies, and other expense is the committee expense for honorariums. So that's that fund there. Economic development is ED1, if you go over probably 2 more pages. And this is the same way, we got $280,000 in expenses to be paid for by the members. And it is just based on the tax base. Next page. ED1, there's no revenues. The ED2, ED3. Those are our expenses for economic development. So 71,000 is the allocation from corporate services. So portion of the wages, portion of the expenses. Salaries and benefit, 102,000. 100,000 in professional services. So once again, studies and plans. And the committee expenses, 6,550, a little bit for office equipment and supplies, so.
Mark?
Yeah.
So for tourism, we said half of the salary was 38.3,
38.3, I think it was.
and we said a salary here is 102.
Yeah, that's a full person there.
So we're paying the tourism person 76.6 and the economic development 102.
Not exactly, because they have to include our contributions and things like that. I don't know if the salary, if that's the right salary.
No, but this number would include the contribution. Yes, I understand that there's more cost than the fee, but the money going to it is 76.6 for tourism and 102 for economic development.
Yeah.
Based on a guess that we're gonna have to pay more for the economic development for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sound valid to you? I'm just guessing, but they're harder to find, I don't know.
Maybe impossible, who knows?
Maybe. And well, that's the end of ED3. Next one's the capital, which is nothing, and community development.
Now, the funding formula is different for this, right?
Yes, it is. So,
50% population, 50% tax base.
yeah, all the rest of them are that way. So the operating budget, total budget's 147,000. We're getting 66,000 from ESIC. And those are the contributions for all the members, so it's based on 50% of population, 50% of tax base. Prorated. The expenses, the revenues listed on the next page is CD-2. That's the 66,000 coming from ESIC. Next page after that is the expenses. And so we have 71,000 in corporate costs. Personnel, 68,700. And so that's what we've estimated for the salary plus the benefits. So it is a little more than what you're getting for money from ESIC.
It's a lot less than we're paying economic development or tourism.
Yes. Although the tourism position is only a half a position, it's shared between tourism and recreation.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's same expenses, a little bit for office supplies and committee expenses. That's it for that. No capital expenditures on CD-cap. RT-1 is regional transportation services. So our expenses are 69,000. We're getting 50,000 from the government. That flows through the dial ride. And in the end, maybe it's not even going to show up in our budget. It may go directly to dial ride, but we included it at this point. And once again, all those costs are split based on the proportion of tax base and population. Next page shows the revenue we're going to get in for dial ride of 50,000. RT2. RT3 is the expenses. So we're getting 12,747 allocated from corporate. We got a little bit in office and equipment. And the other is the committee expenses and 50,000 going to dial ride. Some more pages over. Regional Public Safety Committee. Oh, yes, TSC-1. Well, 17,247 is the total budget. And it's split same way, 50% tax base, 50% population. The next page is PSC2 with nothing on it. PSC3. The start of the expenses for Public Safety Committee, 12,747 is the allocation for the corporate. And we got a little bit for office expense and committee expense. And then we have our dear old speed trailer for 3,000 in operating costs.
Let's see, we have part that action.
Maybe Glenn will buy it so he doesn't get sweet dinner.
I've got 1 year. Not on
There.
Yeah,
Okay.
I said you're gonna drive home yet.
And then a couple more tabs over is the regional sport, recreation, and cultural infrastructure support development services. So the 703,986 is the total expense. And it's split 50% tax base, 50% population. And the expenses are all listed 2 pages over because there's no revenue, so SRC-3. And then we have 26,000 allocated from corporate. Personnel was 38.3, and that's the other half of what was in tourism promotion. The committee expenses 3,275. And under the recreation cost sharing, we got 4 for admin, 2 for travel. And the 2 cents of the 2022 tax base comes to 629,813.
Well. So, but does it still work out to 2 cents based on the fact that it's population and
It never
tax
was.
base?
Well, it was that way before that we paid it out based on that 2 cents. Right, and so that 2 cent of the tax base is calculated based on 50% population, 50% tax base.
Okay,
No different than what it was last year. It's not a perfect calculation,
no,
but as close as we can get. Based on the rules.
You got a question now, like we're doing this, and we're bringing in LaPro and
Musquash.
Musquash. Are their figures all figured in on this?
yeah,
Okay.
they're funny.
Funding
short.
stores.
All right,
We already had LaPro, so it's just Musquash with that.
It's the second biggest tax base in the area.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure there must be questions. Okay.
You did a very good job briefing all that. There doesn't appear to be any questions on that. Oh,
I have a question.
Yeah,
Has anybody given any consideration to the, I know you costed what the board and executive committee and stuff get there, but I'm thinking the role is going to greatly increase for those people, the mayors, what they're going to have to do to prepare for these meetings and stuff now, because they're looking after the additional services. So I'm thinking somebody should consider looking at that to make that stipend of the $101 or everything, something a little more reasonable. So you might want to consider that in the budget. When you talked about the ED and the CEO, like for instance, if Hollis didn't get his job and they hired a CEO from somewhere else, there'd be a severance. So if there's a severance, that should be on the government's tab, not on the RSC's tab, because the RSC didn't make the move. It was the government that made the move. So we should be looking at making sure that that happens, so that doesn't come out of the taxpayers' pockets in this area. And it'd be nice to have a summary, just a little card. I know it's in there, like you went through all the new services. I think that comes out to 2 cents, roughly 2 cents per 100 for all the new mandated services. So it'd be nice to see 2022's budget, 2023's budget total for the whole RSC with and without the new mandates, just in one specific page. That's it. You can probably get that done when you do the org chart. Just easy for me to do that than to try to pick it out of the budget and tell people and show people.
Yeah, no, I got it.
do we have any idea what the other RSCs are paying members when they go to this new?
Yeah, I don't know if they made any changes for next year. It's an interesting point. There's gonna be half as many board members, so probably twice as many meetings, so.
That's what I'm saying.
They're gonna have to step up into all the committee positions too.
Well, the committees are all changing, so.
We'll take that under consideration. We won't make any decisions here tonight, but
I put it under action.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking of, like, if you were gonna take, say, the stipend from 100 to 200 or 100 to 300 or something, right? Then that's gonna add 15, 20,000 to the budget, and that, that's all I was thinking.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Well.
No,
Right,
but
it's gonna go from
losing
seven.
half of what happened for now.
Right.
All the LSD guys will be gone.
Yeah, in the budget, what happened was they took the amount that we paid everybody today and we cut it in half because we only had half the group, so. It's a valid question that I've looked at.
Probably really shouldn't leave the book the same.
I'll leave that one to the board. I mean, I'm good either way, but.
You have predicted that you would probably need 2 meetings a month in order to maintain control over all the committees and everything that has to be done on a monthly basis. So in which case, even though, the number of people is going to go down, the number of meetings is going to go up.
Yeah.
So maybe we should reverse the numbers back to where they were.
Maybe it should be.
Hopefully we're running.
Maybe it should be the new board, like some of those things.
Yeah, and so if the number of meetings are going up, Al's sitting there, if Al ends up being crazy enough to run again. He's got his regular job, he's got all his mayoral duties, which are gonna be a mess because of all the changes to the municipal district. Then he's gonna be above and beyond that, 2 meetings a month for 6 months or 10 months at the Regional Service Commission. So it's a lot to ask somebody to add that amount of prep time and that amount of time out of their personal life without there being reasonable compensation for it.
And I don't think I think it'll be more than 2 meetings a month.
Yeah, the intent was, because I knew that the board is seven of the 8 are mayors, and they're gonna have all their council stuff. So rather than have a whole bunch of different committees like a finance and audit and executive and HR, we combine those all into one committee of the whole meeting a month, and then one board meeting where you make the motions a month. That was my concept. Don't have to do that, but that's what I thought would be more efficient, because it avoids a lot of, there's only 80 to any.
Yeah. But if you could do a little more, just do a little digging into that one, see what the other RFPs are doing. And we'll have a look at it again. Okay. Thanks, all. Any other questions, comments?
I got a question for, no, there's Maurice right there. So if these services now are going to be provided by the region, whereas they were pretty well kind of funded and there was some other money that came from Fredericton, is there going to be any changes as to what money goes to Fredericton with regards to paying for these services at the provincial level, like economic development, community development, so on and so forth? We're going to see any changes to our income taxes or taxes, local tax, I guess, not local tax, but the part that goes to Fredericton, like policing, for instance, when they changed policing a few years back, all the money used to go to Fredericton. We never saw it on our local tax bill. And then they said, you guys are going to start seeing it. And over 4 or 5 years, they phased it in, and we started seeing it on our local taxes. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be any changes like that pending.
You're
You're
muted.
muted, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Sorry, I had mute on. I'm not aware of any at all. I haven't heard any discussion. There's been no reference, and I've been involved in enough meetings, speaking of meetings, with folks at local governance. However, we can follow up. Ken and I can follow up on that question, because I think it is a pertinent one. As I say, I'm not aware of any, but I can't say definitively that there are not, because if there are and I don't know about them, then I've misled you, and I wouldn't want to do that. So Ken and I will take that one under advisement, and we can let Hollis know. But again, as I say, I'm not aware of any kind of clawback or increased in taxes in order to draw any of the money back to the provincial government. But we'll check on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
I
Dennis,
got,
sorry, I got Dennis here.
I was just wondering, if this new CEO that's coming in, who is he going to be reporting to, the government or to the board?
To the board. Yeah, same as it's been with the
Wouldn't it
executive
make-
director.
Wouldn't it be wise for the board to be the one who would be picking out the CEO?
Well, again, one could make the same argument for the budget, but it's been decided that the budget, as you know, is going to be finally approved by the minister. And in the same way, the minister has the final sign off on who the CEO is going to be. Now, there was a headhunting firm that was engaged to do work. They've done thorough work for all of the RSCs, and it was left to the transition facilitator to identify a number of people that would sit around the table after a series of interviews had already taken place, and then transition facilitator and KBRS, the firm that was hired, as well as a few, and it was determined by the transition facilitator, a few either elected representatives and or CAOs or clerks formed part of the search committee, and final interviews were done with at least 2 candidates in RSCs. And then one is recommended by the transition facilitator for final approval by the minister. That was the process that was put in place. But going forward, the CEO will report full-time to the board in the same manner as the executive director currently does.
And who sets the salary?
That's set in the budget. Oh, sorry, no, I'm wrong. The salary ranges were established based on the size of the RSCs. There were 3 salary ranges, three different sizes of RSCs, and within each of those salary ranges, depending on where your RSC fit in, the recommendation comes from the executive director as part of the budget process as to what the salary should be, in consultation with the transition facilitator and KBRS, and that's the recommendation that goes to the province.
What was the range for our RSC?
Oh, okay. Ask somebody else a question, and I'll get you the. I didn't memorize them all, but I do have that information right here. So let me dig it out, and I'll
Okay,
provided-
Ken Anthony, you had a comment?
I don't have a copy of it, no.
I have a copy of them. I just need to dig it out. It's in my file here, but if you can just, if you don't mind, if you could carry on, Mr. Chair, with other questions for just a moment, I'll dig that out. I have it here. Just a matter of finding it amongst my hiring files.
I don't see a lot of hands up for any other questions. Were there any other questions now?
I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Al, I missed it.
So my question is, the board can only direct the CEO, or do we have control over the other employee as well? The other EA
The executive
With the
director?
board?
or
The executive
DD?
director?
Yeah.
Yes, the CEO would come into that role and would review, obviously, the organization and the organizational chart and the tasks that are required to be undertaken, the staff that's currently in place, including the ED, if in fact it's a new CEO other than the current ED. And then a recommendation would be made to the board. Ultimately, the decision is the board's as to whether that executive director position is needed or not. But it would be based on a recommendation one way or the other from the new CEO.
Yeah, so just to make something clear, and Glenn can back me up there. I had a meeting with Mr. Donahue, the ADM here a while back about this particular issue. And he indicated that once this new structure is in place and the board can change and amend their bylaws any way they want. There is no restrictions like there was last time. So if we want control, if we want certain spending limits, if we want different things like that, the new board can put any of those controls in that they want. And so that's probably one of the first things the board should get to make sure that they have what they need there to be intrusive and accountable to the taxpayer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Wade. That was one of the things that we've discussed here as well, is that when the new board meets, we need to do a review of the bylaws to determine what it is the board wants to accomplish and how much, I guess, authority do they want to have within those bylaws on the operation. So that is going to be one of the first things that the new board will have to look at. You're absolutely correct.
It's oversight, because oversight, like right now, the government doesn't come down and check and do anything with the RSCs. And so there's no oversight from Fredericton on them other than budget approval. And the boards are typically limited as to their access to stuff or their, ability to get, to actually control certain things. So this is something that, we don't want this entity now that's grown and is huge, is going to be huge, to be a relatively ungoverned, pseudo governmental body. So it's got to have, the board's got to be engaged. This is why I talk about increasing the stipends, because the new mayors and whoever's going to represent that rural district have to really be focused on this to make sure that everything is and Hollis, you do a fantastic job. But it's nice to be able to go to the taxpayer and say, yeah, I can hold my hand on my heart that your money's being well spent in that regional service commission. And the only way you do that is by having those types of controls and oversight and accountability.
Yeah. Excellent comments, Wade. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, just want to add that once we, well, I guess actually I should take this back. We're not approving the budget, are we? Anyway, the CEO is controlled by the budget. So if they get a budget line, really the board can't stop that process from happening once we approve this budget. Am I correct?
I don't know that I understood the question. Could you repeat the question, Alan, please?
So if we approve a budget, in my mind, I was thinking we were actually approving a budget like we should be, but we're not anyway. But if a budget is set, that allows the CEO operates his business under that budget, really the board has no say on most budget lines, right?
Well, you do after the budget's in place. You could decide not to spend money in the new year on a particular matter. You could decide, for example, if it's the existing executive director that gets the CEO position, you may or may not decide to keep the executive director position, even though you may have funded it. You may have put it in the budget for the year is erring on the side of caution, assuming that Hollis does not get the position. You may have said, look, we're going to need to pay for a new CEO, right? And so we'll need to cover some costs either to carry the executive director position going forward in addition to the CEO, or perhaps to cover some severance costs if it's decided by the board that the executive director position is going to go away. So there is going to be some flux in the budget as you're carrying through the year and as it's being implemented. I don't know if I answered your question, but at the end of the day, the board is going to be responsible for carrying out the budget to the extent that it sees appropriate during the course of the year.
Yeah, I think at any time we can make a motion, or the board can make a motion to change an item on the budget, to move money from one line item to another, or to cancel a line item and not fund it.
Right.
You know, and as long as a majority votes on it, I think that'd be normal Robert's rules, wouldn't it?
I have to check on that, but you might fall into that 2/3 vote.
Winston, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a good answer to a question that's been bothering me for quite a while. What's the difference between a CEO and an executive director? Is it a pay scale, or is there a different knowledge, or is there a different way of doing things if he's CEO or the executive director? I don't quite understand it. You know, I mean, you have an executive director now, and you have a chairman of the board. But
Okay.
what's the CEO going to do differently?
Okay, so the executive director currently fulfills the responsibilities of the RSC as it's currently constituted, providing the services that it currently provides. With the government reform kicking in starting in January of 2023, there will be the addition of half a dozen or so new services with, as I'm sure you'll all agree, in some instances, relatively significant dollar amounts attached to them. Obviously, the management role of staff will increase, where the likelihood is that there'll be increased staff. In some cases, it may be a number of staff, particularly if some of the services are being delivered internally. If they're not being delivered internally and they're being delivered by a third party, then obviously there's an additional responsibility to oversee the work of that third party. And the overall management of the operation in that instance has grown and expanded considerably because of the additional services and because of the additional expenditures that are going to be overseen by that position. So it was felt as part of the reform that there should be a more senior level position identified as a chief executive officer position, paid for at a higher salary than is currently the case with executive directors. However, executive directors, current ones, would be incumbents, would be given every opportunity to compete for those positions. And in some cases, they'll be getting the job of CEO. And in some cases, it could very well be, in fact, I know of one at least, where the likelihood is that the executive director position will not be funded going forward, simply on the basis that they don't feel it's necessary. It's certainly in some of the larger ones, the three largest regional service commissions, I think there's a very strong likelihood that both the executive director and the CEO positions will be maintained.
I'd just like to add one thing. A CEO, the difference between a CEO and an ED. A CEO, his number one priority is to set the vision for the operation, for the organization. So what is the vision as to where you want to take that organization? That is the primary function of a CEO. An ED, his primary function is maintaining the operation and making sure it's functional. If you're going to take those two and combine them, certainly your CEO for an operation this size can conduct both. But to me, the most important function for a CEO is to provide the vision for the organization as to where you want to take it. That's Ken Staggs.
I just have to say, I'm sorry you didn't write it with the vision over the last few years. I mean, that's wrong, right? So,
In fact,
all I understand is
the CEO is gonna get paid bigger money to do the same job the executive director is doing. They came to our village office and said you need a CAO. And I said, for what? Well, they're gonna have a senior person in the office to do the work. Well, can we work her part-time? No, you can't work part-time, you gotta be full-time. Well, our office isn't that busy, even with the new LSDs and everything else. So all it is that I can see is that you wanna put a CEO in here, it's gonna cost more tax money. You wanna put a CAO in the village office of Harvey, it's gonna cost more money. For what? To do the same job. You know, that's all I can figure out. That's all.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Thanks, Lisa, appreciate that.
I'm just wondering if Maurice found the wage scale.
You know what? I used it the other day and I don't know if I just put it in my I couldn't put it in my recycling bin, but I can't locate it. And I've been looking at it while I was listening to you folks. I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to get it and I'll get Hollis to circulate it tomorrow morning. My apologies for that. As I say, I've got 3 files. I had it. I referred to it the other day. I just went through those files twice and I couldn't find it. But anyway, my apologies. I thought I was certain I had it and it may be still buried in there. Hang on. Okay, I got it. So there. Okay, so there are 3 levels. Okay. So I'll just read from this document. Region. So the 3, 1, 2, 3. The 3 larger regional service commissions, that is RSC 11, the Capital Region, the Fundy Region, which is 9, and the Southeast Regional Service Commission, which is 7. For those 3, the salary range is between 134,576 going up to 151,398. And of course, there are a number of requirements that go along with that, master's degree, et cetera, or an equivalent experience, et cetera. The second level is RSC 10, Southwest. There's Chaleur, RSC 3, and Northwest Regional Service Commission. That salary range is 119,262 going up to 131,222. And then the third is the Greater Miramichi RSC 5, the Kent Region Regional Service Commission 6, the Western Valley Regional Service Commission 12, the Restigouche Regional Service Commission 2, and the Acadian Peninsula Regional Service Commission number 4. The salary ranges there are between 100,776 to 122,044, $122,044. There.
Thank you, Maurice.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mo. Okay. Any last comments, questions on the budget? If not, we will turn over to the executive director's report. Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick because I know we're getting out there. Putting your package, of course. So our waste stream is steadily increasing year over year. It's exactly what we want to see. Exactly what we expected. Our building permits are down slightly actually over last year, which last year was exceptionally. We're still up overall historically. I'm absolutely not worried about that. In the landfill, so we're almost done with cell 12. Probably a couple of weeks from now, it'd be ready to accept waste. We don't have to go right into it though, because we still have lots of space ahead on top. So we're in good shape there. This cell 12 is going to last quite a bit longer than 11 did because of the shape. So the 11 was the start of a row, so it's almost like a pyramid shape. It's more of a trapezoid because it's leaning on cell 11. So a lot more volume. We should get probably, I don't know, at least 3 years for this one. The gas flare should be operational probably the next month. We were waiting on parts, much like everything else you hear about. There's delays in getting some electronic parts and some things like that. We did do a test fire and it did work, so should be in good shape. A little bit of a report there on planning inspection and some of our local planning updates, so. We're getting Fundy Bay translated in French, should be ready for, when are we doing that, Heather, September, late. The end of
The
September.
public meeting is September 29th, I believe.
St. George's plans complete. St. Andrews, we've got lots of stuff on the go in St. Andrews. We're doing some zoning updates with St. Stephen. Gadam has a rezoning. We had one file already from Fundy RC that's actually in, it's going to be in our region next year, but right at the moment that's on hold. But we were ready to kind of move in there because we knew that that was going to bleed over to next year. Building inspection stuff. We did have a little education seminar. We had it right here in this room on ICF stuff, especially for shear walls and seismic zones. It was well attended. It was good. We're going to plan to do a little more education stuff.
That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea.
No, it was good. We want to do more of that. That's really important, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any questions of the director on his report?
I just have one. You're saying that you're pretty near done with number 11, cell 11.
Mhm.
Will it go to the end of the year? Or won't go that long?
You might.
That's going to be close to 3 years if you're putting in cell 11,
What we did was, well, we started that one in July of
2020.
2020. So we have to remember that. What happened was we're putting more in than we anticipated because we went up a few lifts. Because it's next to the original row. So
it slopes.
we're able to go up higher.
And during that time, we're also putting it back in the tent.
Yeah, we were actually putting stuff, well, right now, we're putting stuff on 10. Because
That's Mark, you can explain this the best when you try to figure it out.
It's actually going back from 9 AM to 5 now. That's too much information for everybody.
Yeah, Mike will have this conversation every time. Kind of use the cell 10 and we're kind of using cell 11 and we're kind of using cell 9.
Efficiency.
I got some pictures of all this.
He went on a tour yesterday.
Okay, other questions? We'll move on to the financial report.
Okay, so I included the comparative income statement. The only, I'm not gonna go into details on it, but the only thing I do want to note here, so our net income at the bottom there is 360,000, that's surplus essentially. Seems great, but a year ago that was like $1 million, and that's because of the big surplus we had. And if you look through the numbers here, you'll notice that operational in solid waste is a little higher than where it should be. There are seasonal fluctuations in here, but that number there is a reflection of the price of diesel. And just, we had a couple of big repairs this year that sort of unexpected, so. We are still in good shape. We're still not gonna have a problem meeting the budget this year, but it is running tighter than say last year.
Any question on the income statement? Seeing no hands or anything, we will finalize that financial report. Thank you very much. The only last thing I have is the date and time of the next regular meeting, which is the 22nd of September, 6 p.m. Are there any questions from the public?
Nope. I don't have anything, Mr. Chair.
Great.
I will return.
Dennis, thank you very much. Whoa, you have something?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I just want to add a comment. Following the previous meeting that we had, a colleague that works at local government at GNB at the province was in touch because they had picked up a comment that had been made by one of you about the suggestion that, you know, if there was a way that we could get going maybe a little earlier than January of 23 on tourism, you know, that would be good. And Hollis responded by saying, well, you know, the money really just kicks in January. Well, the individual who was watching this got in touch with me and indicated that, you know, I might want to talk to Hollis, and because there is probably some money that can be made available if an RSC wants to undertake some of these services a little earlier. In other words, get a bit of a jump head start. And that's what Hollis referred to at the outset of the meeting today. And I just wanted to say that every once in a while, it's really useful to get these suggestions that get made about maybe we can do something. And then we do a little exploring on it. And we come to find out that, yes, there is money in the province for possibly some tourism promotion work. There is likely some money available to start programs and initiatives this year, as opposed to waiting till January. As a result of that, the executive directors meeting, I understand today, they were talking about potentially some money from ACOA. So it's funny how this stuff kind of spirals. And I just thought it would be useful to just mention that it's useful to get all these questions raised and comments and observations, because sometimes we can go back and find something out that we didn't otherwise know that might be helpful to carry out some of the activities a little earlier than planned. Anyway, I have one final comment. I do have a takeaway, and that's about whether the RSCs can be expected to be charged anything or clawed back any money. And I'll follow up on that, and I'll feed that information. We'll feed that information back into Hollis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
See you, Ken. See you guys,
See you,
girls.
folks.
Yeah.
Good night.
Crazy.
Thanks, Maurice.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Thanks, everyone.
My screen is off, yeah.